Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Beth Comstock.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks so much. Great. Thanks for being with us again. Beth, as you know, is a Chief Marketing Officer for General Electric. And as I promised in the beginning, we're going to toggle back and forth here. We're going to talk about what are the big technology trends, what are the new industries and jobs they're throwing off, and then the skills and the education that requires. And I can't think of anyone better. Beth is a returnee, and so thank you for coming back to the conference. I want to start, Beth, with, because last year you talked about the Internet of Things, which GE is central to developing. Bring us up to date, again, on this thing that is connecting everything from this clock to soon my watch to those light bulbs. Where is it, and why for GE is it really the next big thing?
Yeah, it is the next big thing in a big way, because for us, we make really big machines, very complicated works of technology, and you can do more with them, connecting them to data, analyzing their performance, drive up, we think, a whole new wave of productivity. We call it the industrial internet. I think a lot of people are calling it that, and it really is when industry comes online. So think of all the great technology that's happened on the consumer side, now applied to technology, to industry, and leading a wave of productivity that's staggering. So the space has been defined. Companies like ours investing big time. Down in San Ramon, not far from here, we have a software center. We've hired 1,000 engineers.
So GE's back in Silicon Valley.
We're back in Silicon Valley in two ways. We're doing that, and we're also partnering with startups, but in a big way. So we've built this industrial strength technology stack to start to connect a jet engine to the internet. You heard Quentin talk earlier, thousands of sensors, incredible amount of data, 1 terabyte of data in a jet engine, a flight of an airplane. So huge opportunity. So we're building it. We've been partnering with security companies. We've been partnering with Amazon Web Services, Pivotal, a new startup here in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of room for people to partner. The big stage for us now is starting to apply it with our customers. So I think we've proven to ourselves we can build it. Still a lot to do. But how do we engage with customers? What's the market for this? This is where I spend a lot of my time. What are the commercial opportunities?
Yes, what does it mean for people in this room that the people who made your washer, your refrigerator, the engine you flew on, is now going to have all this smart data being pulled off these devices?
Yeah, I think this most substantial is what does it mean in big industry. So if you get goods shipped by a locomotive on a train, you want that train to get there faster, so it delivers. I mean, there's a lot of inefficiency. The average train only goes something like 21 miles a day. It's not because the locomotives don't go faster. They go really fast. It's because there's a lot of inefficiency in the system. If you could start to track the assets, understand where they are. Think about a jet engine. Maybe you're great. It doesn't need to come in for service. It can ping back and say, I'm great. I don't need to come off the wing. I can stay up. Or, hey, predictively, you're going to have a problem. So it starts to ladder up to all of us, cheaper, better experiences. That's really why you should care.
You've been tracking this and more through really a new kind of barometer, which I'm very interested in the Global Business Barometer. And I know it's been central to your work. Tell me about it, because you got some new, I think, results out.
Well, partly we're very passionate about innovation, a big technology company. I personally am very passionate about the market innovation piece of it. And with our customers wanting to know what's on their mind. We look around the globe, so every year we do something called the Innovation Barometer, where we talk to C-level executives in 30 different countries. And we ask them some of these things. What are you seeing? How is big data playing out? What do you find about innovation? And a couple of interesting themes. We're going to release some of this next week, but worth noting. Big data is on everyone's mind. We get it.
It's the next big thing.
It's the next big thing. But most businesses don't know what to do with it. And that's what we're seeing. You really have to get in there. It's still early. You have to get in there and figure out what's the data worth. What's the insight worth? It's not just about data scientists who can write algorithms. What's the value in that? So I think we're all figuring that out. The good news is we're open to, business is open to it. We sort of came up with a phrase. We talked about business now being kind of disruption ready. You talked earlier about sort of innovation ready.
What does that mean?
And I think it's a sense over the past couple of years, business leaders saying, oh my gosh, speed is happening so fast. Change is happening, exponential technology. We're overwhelmed. global, local, protectionism, IP issues, business leaders going, oh, I can't do this. Now they're saying, I got to do something. The models are happening so fast. We're ready for disruption, a bit more. They're not saying it's easy. What are they saying they need to do? More collaboration, big company to small, government to big company, academic institutions. They have to be more entrepreneurial. And a lot of appetite for new models. It's not just sell a thing. It's a service on top of it, led by digitization. So we see that everywhere. And some interesting insights. Japan's kind of coming back. I think in a sense of sort of ready to, kind of step out again from an innovation perspective. Middle East continues to express Turkey. Mexico, sort of some interesting insights from business leaders there. So we always track that to see where's the world going, what's on the minds of our customers.
Let me just stop for a second and shift to the personal. You're the most senior woman executive at GE, probably in the country, one of the most senior women executives in a real, hardcore industry, nuts and bolts, doing things. How did you get there?
I don't know, actually.
I think just a lot of people here would be interested.
Yeah, I think one is just finding what you're good at and understanding what value you can contribute. So in my case, in a company like GE, big technology company, you need an advocate to fight for what's next, to fight for the market. So people often hear, oh, marketing, you do the ads. Yeah, we do that, but we do a lot more. We're about developing what's next. And so you have to find your way there and make it real. A lot of times you can be very academic, so I think I've just gravitated to that.
Do you have an engineering background?
I don't. I have a science background. I studied biology, and I think it's turned out to be quite helpful. As you can tell, I didn't go to medical school. Here I am doing this. But we talk about business and being an ecosystem, but it really is, and that, to me, brings it back to bear. So why I'm here in Silicon Valley a lot is we're partnering with startups. We're investing. We're partnering. Ben Kaufman's here later from Quirky. We have a great partnership.
On that. GE, giant GE, how many employees do you have around the world?
300,000.
300,000 is partnering with little Quirky? I mean,
little
we're going to talk. What's that all about? How do you manage that and why?
And Quirky is one of about a dozen startups we're partnering with. And why do you do it? Back to what I said earlier, set the stage, what's on the minds of business. We're not always the fastest. We need partners to help us know what's next, to share risk and reward. So with Quirky, we said, hey, smart things is happening. We see it in really big machines. We want to be part of the consumer piece of it, too. It's not going to be core to our business, but let's partner with someone who's fast, focused, fearless. Well, that describes Ben Kaufman and what they're doing at Quirky. So we invested in the company, but more importantly, we're partnering.
How does it work? They come up with, somebody's got a new way to scramble eggs, and you say, hey, that sounds interesting, take it this far, and then GE will take it later. How do you manage it?
It's a total partnership, and the best example is what's in the market right now, the Aero Smart Air Conditioner. So it was a core air conditioning technology out of GE Appliances. Ben's community, there was a guy out of the US Energy Department who said, I have a smart algorithm that can make that air conditioner smart, so you can adapt it to your monthly budget, you can turn it on before you come home. Ben has a machine that takes an idea from a community, packages it brilliantly, gets it to market fast. We're talking months, not years. So it's a beautiful partnership. So what Ben gets is access to technology, access to great engineers who help him scale fast. What we get is access to ideas that we didn't come up with, and an ability to move fast and get things going. It's a lot of work. That's why back to the CEOs being a little anxious about it. It's hard work.
How do you manage that? How do you stay abreast of things, but also not get overwhelmed?
I don't know how to answer that. I think most of us are overwhelmed. I find myself, anywhere I go, I ask someone, what's your productivity hack? What do you do? How do you manage your email? I think all of us are overwhelmed. I think part of a job of someone like me in a company is to constantly be out in the world, constantly go to new areas where innovation is happening and try to bring that back, bring colleagues with you. We've been spending a lot of time getting our engineers with our customers, marrying marketing and engineering with a midwife in Indonesia to say, I'm going to bring an ultrasound that's really simple to use because there are no doctors, let alone radiologists. And so I think there's a huge priority in skills to deal with some of this in simplicity, user interface, user experience. I think a lot of us are starting to figure our way through that.
So, one of the things we've been trying to talk about today is the whole supply chain. You've talked about the Internet of Things, next new thing, kind of industry that it's creating, the kind of collaborations it's creating. Let's now continue to the education side. What does that mean in terms of the kind of skills GE is looking for today in the new hires it's making?
Yeah. We spent a ton of time thinking about this, and there are a couple of interesting examples I can give you. I think we're at this interesting nexus of hardware and software, and I think that is the next big thing for us. You see a lot of people here excited about it. Tim O'Reilly had a solid conference a couple weeks ago, 1,200 people. So you get software people saying, I need to get into hardware. Hardware people like us saying we need to get into software. So one of the critical skills is someone who can wield a welding gun and write code. And it's both sides of the brain. So if I had a kid that was in elementary or secondary school, I definitely would encourage them, similar to what you've heard this morning, you kind of need to do both. And I'll apply it for you. We're in the oil and gas business. Gas is a big theme, as you know, a transition fuel. We're sort of in the age of gas. As an industry, it's old. There are a lot of service people who are over 55 and retiring, huge talent challenges in that industry. If you can start to appeal to a younger group of people who are both digitally savvy and physically savvy, and you've got that kind of component for augmented reality on a rig, that you've got your Oculus on, you're figuring out how to fix the blowout preventer piece, and I'm clearly not an oil and gas technician, but it appeals to a whole new group of people just at a time when we need it. Now, there's going to be a lot of transition, but that's, for us, what we're looking at. We're doing some work I'm pretty excited about. It started as more promotional, where we said we want to show people what it means to do manufacturing. Let's give people a hands-on experience. So it became a bit experiential. I saw Mark Hatch here from Tech Shop. We created these pop-ups in cities around the US where anyone could come in and figure out, how do you weld? What's a 3D printer? What's a laser, CNC? What are all these machines?
Tell me how it works, a pop-up. And where have you done it?
In Chicago, we've done it in Austin, we've done it in college campuses, and it stays for like a month. And
I can come in and weld something.
You can come in and make something. You can design it with software. You could create shapes you never thought possible, create a physical form. And it's been interesting, the educational component. Teachers and students have been hungry for it. So then we said, okay, what can we do with that? And now we're launching it next week in Nigeria. And it's Pop-Up Plus. We think this is sort of a new element in terms of skills development, even social responsibility, where we're going to create a center in Nigeria. We're going to Lagos. We're teaming with a number of foundations. And we're going to create an ongoing education mechanism that allows people to come in and hands-on. You start to badge them. Government wants to invest, and then we tap into the entrepreneur community and allow people to kind of tap into a global supply chain, hopefully. So hopefully you'd inspire people. Maybe they create a new business. GE can help digitally connect them into our supply chain and supplier supply chain. That's the vision. It's still early, but we're launching in Nigeria with this sense that skills and jobs are incredibly important everywhere in the world.
So that's a good segue to my next question, which is that one great thing about this hyper-connecting world is that innovation can now come from anywhere. And you can start a company that is global overnight in Nigeria or Chennai as easily as in Chicago or Niagara. How are you capturing that's going on out there? Because there's so many more people now working on solving the world's biggest problem.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's challenging because, again, all these things you see where they could go, but they're so small, and they're very difficult pieces you have to work through. But we talked about the industrial internet. It's also changing the way you make, the digitization. We talk about brilliant factories. What is exciting about it is suddenly you can bring your supply chain onto the factory floor with a customer through software. You can share things, you can iterate, you can start to find new suppliers because you have new specifications. And we've been testing this. I think I talked about some of this last year. It's scaled a bit, but we've done challenges, puzzles, if you will.
Talk about that, how you try to stimulate innovation. Because when I was up at GE Labs last year, one of the things they told me was that they just created a contest for who could take 80% of the weight out of an engine fastener. And they got hundreds, maybe thousands of people voluntarily for free, well, sending in designs. The winners got paid. But what was so interesting to me, the winner was not an aeronautical engineer.
Not an aeronautical engineer, a student. Was able to take 80% of the weight out. And so this idea of tapping into the global brain, it's going to have huge impacts for the future of work. Companies, I think, have to open themselves up to these challenges.
So tell people how you do it. You literally create a contest.
Yeah, in this case, we created we've teamed with a number of people to create contests, challenges. It's basically a puzzle that needs solved. You put prize money out. I think over time, people start to get badged and certified. We haven't quite done that. We're looking at doing that.
I won 3 GE contests.
Exactly.
As an employer, boy, I would be looking at that.
That's worth something.
Yeah.
And we're also doing revenue share in some of these as we get more sophisticated. We've done something in Louisville with a startup called Local Motors, where we've built something called First Build, and we're inviting engineers from around the world, but also physically in Louisville, to come in and help redesign the future kitchen. And so people who do that, there's a prize. If they create something that's commercialized, they should get part of the revenue stream. So I think if you're a company, you have to think the best ideas aren't in my place. I need to open myself up. A lot of IP, access, we're all working through that. But the idea that we could get a design student in Indonesia, wow, that's pretty powerful.
But your title is C.M.O. You also got to deal with the world of Twitter, Facebook, GE's brand. How is that universe changing? What are the new challenges there for you?
Well, the most exciting challenge is everybody's a content company.
What does that mean?
That means we all have great stories. I mean, people love seeing how do hydraulics work? Take me to the bottom of an oil rig. What happens to a blowout preventer? Wow, we did something recently on the miracles of material science. Metallurgy is cool. And the ability to tell those stories, now we're not the New York Times, we don't have the distribution, we don't have the context, the expertise, but there's suddenly an interesting way for us to tell stories alongside your stories. So I think that ability to tell our story, to open up our brand in a way, with Quirky, so that an inventor can come in and say, here's a GE patent. I'm going to pay a licensing fee to GE, but I can build my own business on top of that. That builds the brand as well.
Before we go to questions, when I was up at your labs in Niskayuna, upstate New York, I was going through the 3D printer lab, and they printed this little, steel ball for me, and they were explaining that what you can do now when you're trying to design a new part for an airplane, you used to take, first you had to design it, then you had to create the machine to actually make it, to tool it. Then you had to iterate it, and if it didn't work, you had to create another machine. And basically, it was a 2-year process. They've taken that 2 years down to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the head of your lab, and I'm forgetting her name now, or the woman who took me on a tour, she was explaining to me, and she said something that just really blew my mind. She said, Tom, today complexity is free.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
And I said, well, have you been thinking that all along, or did you just say that for me right now? Because that's like a really big thought.
Yeah.
That we're actually moving into a world where, with the aid of software and machines now, the complexity of designing an airline part is becoming, from 2 years to 2 weeks, almost free. What does that mean for GE and other industrial companies?
Well, I think it means we're able to go places physically we're never able to. You can design something and print it in 3D. It's still early, but we're doing a lot of advanced work in materials. So you can create competitive edge. You can take weight out of things that physically you couldn't before. So that ability to just create new models. What I also love about it from a environmental perspective is it gets rid of a lot of waste. And I think that's another thing that we're just beginning to understand, that you're able to optimize for just what you need, not the waste that we've seen. And so it brings a whole new skill set into the manufacturing suite. As we've said, it's software design. You're able to iterate real time. What we've done is we've seeded 3D printers around our manufacturing and engineering floors.
Just put them out there.
Just put them out there.
Just like HP laser printers.
And said you have to get this skill. Designers have to get that skill. And what you see is amazing things happening. It just moves that process really fast. We're willing to take now to a customer. It doesn't have to be perfect. What do you think of this design? Would you invest in it? This versus that. So there's a lot of things that kind of complexity allows you to do that a wireframe game or even a CAD design doesn't allow you to communicate.
Exciting. I want to open up for questions for Beth, and while we're just getting the microphones out, Beth, and people can line up. So what's it like when you come out here to Silicon Valley and you're looking to hire software programmers and you say, it's for GE, it's not for Google, it's not for Apple, it's not for Facebook. Is there a challenge in that?
I think we thought there would be more of a challenge. That luckily hasn't, and it's for a couple of reasons. It's sort of what's next. Industrial internet. These are industrial strength problems, and they're solving real needs. So I think most people who are mission-based, you can say we're about taking the weight out so that this is more fuel efficient. We're about solving problems in healthcare. We're about powering the world. These are huge, meaty problems, and the size of the data. The other thing we haven't talked about, I would mention, is just the need for good design thinking, good user interface, user experience. This is an example. If you're a marine, driving a fleet of big boats through the waters, there's a lot of data. If you're piloting an airplane, the data's going to get much, much more sophisticated.
More granular.
But you need to get simpler and simpler so people they only have to think about what's important to make those critical decisions. So we're seeing more and more the need for that kind of expertise. And again, GE's proving, because those challenges are so meaty, designers want to help solve those big problems. And so those are some of the jobs that we're hiring for here.
If there were one, I'm going to steal one last question, because the elephant not in this room, of course, is government. Washington, D.C., we're here in San Francisco. If we're going to this industrial internet, big, disruptive, giant leap, is government doing the things you think need to be done to enhance that revolution?
Well, one of the things as a multinational company, you want markets to be as competitive as possible. So invest in what's next, what's needed. So investment in education, invest in the skills where the world's going to be, invest in the people. So I'd say that is always in need. Yeah. And it's interesting, in this innovation barometer we do, in more developed markets, you see people saying we need government to bring people to us. In the more developed markets, you hear people saying we need you to keep people away. Huh. So you got to get that balance right, create the frameworks for collaboration, create the frameworks for the kind of skills. I mean, I think if I were in government today, I would be calling business people in and say, help me write the blueprint of what is needed for jobs and skills and economic development. We don't get called a lot to do that. It would seem like big companies should be in a position, we don't have all the answers, but we certainly know what we're looking to hire for. So that would be a way. I think there are a lot of incentives for entrepreneurism that some countries are starting to do more of.
We'll call you to talk about Benghazi. Over here, please.
Hi, Beth. I'm Wendy Harrington from Franklin Templeton. We were talking about some pretty profound changes and a lot of new folks entering the workforce, but how are you helping your team members make the shift?
How are we helping our existing team?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Part of what we've tried to do, if you don't like data, you're not going to like the future. So how does data apply to a sales and marketing person? How does data apply if you're in legal? So I think those are critical. I don't have to be a data scientist. I have to work with one. And then I think a big thing for us is trying to bring this entrepreneurism and simplicity thinking into a company like GE. You get big, you get in a lot of different regions. You need to constantly remind yourself, are you fast enough? Are you getting rid of bureaucracy? Are you nimble enough? And so we've taken Lean Startup, for example, as a methodology. It's been mentioned several times here. We've adapted it to something we call FastWorks. It uses some other GE tools, but it very much is be like an entrepreneur. How do you get there faster? How do you increase your throughput? Fail faster, fund at an earlier stage. Perfection is the enemy. I mean, again, those sound so simple. I'm sitting here in a place where this is where it was given birth to. But sometimes in companies, you have to remind yourself, we were once a startup. Thomas Edison is, the Steve Jobs of his time, was once a founder of a company that's been around for a while.
Still here.
So I'd say that's, I think, the critical thing. And the other point that I know my colleagues in HR spend a lot of time, just what does it mean to navigate the future as a leader? I think a lot about this, back to your earlier question, How do you create leadership that's tolerant with ambiguity? You have to love flying in the fog. You don't know all the answers. As much as big data is going to inform you, it's not going to answer your questions. So I think that ability to be nimble, to try something and keep going, those are things, the short-term, long-term, those are challenges that we struggle with in big companies.
Beth, thank you for anchoring us in the world.
Thank
right
you.
Now,
Thanks,
okay?
Tom.
I really
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having
Thank you.
me. Great to see you.
Thanks
Thanks
so
a lot.
much. Really
Bye.